Thank you guys for coming to this event. I've been really eager to integrate science with what I've been doing. And so first I'll tell you a little bit about what I've been doing, and then I'll show you. And then all the questions that will come up hopefully will be answered by scientists to the best of our ability right now. As I understand the word empath, an empath is somebody who feels the feelings of others. Could be these feelings are emotional, or they could be physical, they could be subtle, they could be extreme. I'm sure most of us have had the experience of sitting on an airplane or in a movie theater and somebody next to you is filled with anxiety and you feel their anxiety in your own body. This is probably recognizable to most of the people in the room. That is all we're talking about here with being an empath. I've had that experience in subtle ways, just walking around the world, as many of you have, where you just encounter somebody and you feel something that doesn't quite feel like yours, and that maybe can only be explained when you understand what it is that they're feeling. But I've also had this experience more deliberately and consciously. So I have developed this subtle capacity to the degree that at least I believe I am able to open myself up to another person and consciously and deliberately take on or take in their emotional experience. The way I do this is this is my subjective experience, and I don't have objective language for it, and that's one of the reasons I'm so happy to be here. So my inner experience of this process feels something like this. I close my eyes, and I open up a space in my chest. It's as if I'm parting like the waves to leave room for whatever wants to come in. As you'll see in a moment, I will take somebody's hands, and then I will use this as a channel to invite their energy, whatever you want to call it, emotion, vibe, frequency, I don't know what we're talking about, into my own body. And I have a very subtle experience of what their experience is, unless they are having a very intense experience. So if somebody is overwhelmingly sad at just that moment, it might take me over. But generally speaking, it's a subtle experience. And then I will also, and this gets funky, this subjective language, then I will also, it feels to me like I am entering into their fields. So while I am uptaking some of their energy into my own body, I am also simultaneously, it seems to me, traveling. Now, who is the I who is traveling? I can't tell you, but the subjective experience of one of going like upward and then down, and I start to, as it were, dig or snake through the person's body, or what I would like to use as a phrase, their emotional body. And I feel people in layers. I start by how they're feeling right now in this very moment. And then as I go deeper, I feel into what's happening beyond this moment, what's happening in their lives generally. And then I can go even deeper into what are some of the emotions that are animating their entire life experience as I experience them. Language is tricky here. There are many layers of translation. The last one is language. So I might be having a subtle experience of, let's call it sadness, and as I go further, maybe that's grief. And what's to say that how is grief different than sadness? How does it sit differently in my body? How does it sit differently in their body? How do they, bye-bye microphone, back. How do they understand my language? I'm also having translation issues. Perfect timing. I want to just go on a fun tangent because the microphone has inspired me to do so. And then I'm going to come back to exactly the point I just dropped off at, which is to say, I have noticed a series of uncanny experiences around my attempts to integrate these subtle subjective experiences with science. Juan and I did a rehearsal the other day, and he had so much difficulty putting the EEG on my head. And I truthfully don't believe there's anything unique about my scalp, my hair, my head. I make no special claims, but he had said that he'd never had more trouble putting an EEG on somebody's head in the thousands of times that he's done it. And then
several channels, and they would jump around to different channels. It was crazy. And it happened with all 3 caps. So that's
right?
very unlikely.
And then today, I promise I'm going to go back to the thread of how I do what I do, but I just can't resist a good tangent. And then today, I was doing readings in the street at Octavia and Hayes. And Ariel, who's shooting over here, went looking for people who I could read. Secondary tangent, I love doing this stuff as entertainment as well, as performance art, as a show. I embrace the fact that this is interesting to watch, and I want to use that to be like the sugar that makes the medicine of empathy go down. And I also personally love that aspect of it, and I'm more naturally a talker, communicator, media type than I am, at least as I identify myself, a healer. So back to the tangent right before, Ariel is looking around for somebody to call into this experience that we're offering. And he happens to pull in a man named Daniel, who sits down next to me, and immediately we both share the same sense of familiarity. Like, oh, I know you, you know me, but how is this? And he jokingly points out, well, you're Jewish, I'm Jewish, maybe that's it. And so the reading went.
I intuited that. That was an empathetic reading.
You gave away the moment of the story where I would have turned it over to you, but there he is. And there was something about Daniel that was, many things about Daniel that were unique, but one of the things about Daniel that was so unique is that he, like me, I could feel and see and hear that he had put a lot of energy and time into figuring out how to articulate his inner experience. And that's pretty rare, and it's particularly rare among men to have spent time trying to figure out how to put language to your inner life. And so we had that in common, and then it turned out we both had, sorry for the drop into darkness, Holocaust surviving fathers. And then it got even more uncanny, is that his father is somebody I know of and have thought a lot about, and who my dear friend happens to be featuring in an article in a book she's writing. And she was like, oh my God, you and Daniel are meeting? It just felt like the vortex is spinning as this subtle, subjective, interpersonal stuff that I'm doing my best to put language on starts to meet the harder, clearer language of science and reality as we like to understand it, i.e. things we can measure and perceive. Okay. Coming back, I feel like I'm traveling into another person. It's like I'm snaking downward, or like I'm traveling through water into their being. I go deeper and deeper. And as I do so, I have these subtle experiences, and then I allow my body to express these experiences physically. And each feeling has a corollary in my expression physically. So for instance, I'll just put the mic down for a second. If I'm feeling somebody else's happiness, it feels like this. Or anger feels like, what I'm doing there is no different than you would do if you were feeling an emotion and you decided to allow your body to express it fully. So if you were feeling frustrated and you just said, all right, body, do whatever you want with this frustration, you might go like this. That's all I'm doing. So I'm taking the subtle experience, amplifying it using my muscles. And then over time, I've learned how to correlate what my muscles are telling me with language that tends to resonate. Happy, sad, frustrated. And then I can pick up subtleties, the difference between resentment and anger, or bitterness, the difference between bitterness and resentment. Like, these feel subtly different in my body, and the more I do these readings, the more I can express them. Whoever is sitting with me will often but not always have the experience of being quite seen. Yes, they will sometimes have the experience of, like, oh my God, that was awesome. Sometimes they'll have the experience of going, this was a little bit Daniel too. It's like, yes, that's true, that feels right, but here's, okay, you said mistrust. It doesn't feel like that to me. It feels more like X. So we're parsing language, but we're having some kind of shared experience. And then I'm totally happy to report sometimes it misses the mark completely. It may miss the mark because, and I've seen this happen with myself, I am projecting something I'm feeling onto the person. I am creating a story about what's going on in them because it makes sense based on other things I have picked up on, and I am unconsciously integrating that. And I also am happy to confess that it's very possible, and I have been attacked for this on a stage, that I am putting people into categories on some deeply unconscious level based on age or race or gender or clothing or similarity to me or difference from me. This seems very possible. And I am increasingly, I used to be really excited about getting things right. And it's very validating, as you'll see, when I get something right, something in me lights up undeniably. But I'm increasingly excited about being transparent about my process and allowing people to make of my process whatever it wants, whatever they want. And that's why I'm here. I also want to share, by way of that thought, that the more I've done this kind of work publicly, and I haven't done that much of it, the more I've gotten some really amazing hate mail. And they tend to say the same thing. You are a fraud. You are a narcissist pretending to be an empath. You are clearly lying. And sometimes this hate has come from psychologists or people who are professors. A dear friend of mine wrote me a super nasty email like this. I thought you were better than this. I can't believe that you are going out to people, telling anyone you have this kind of ability. This ability has never been proven scientifically, and who the hell are you to make any such claim? And I respond invariably with, like, what do you want me to do? Like help, oh scientifically minded asshole men, please help me speak your language. And so this is the next step in me attempting and some magic showing up on the other side to bring these two things together. It really is exciting to me and would be like profoundly, like, what's the word? It's like, imagine if you're gay and you don't even know what the thing is, and then somebody finally says you're gay and it's okay. Like, I want that validation. I was talking to my friend Avi, who's been helping me with this a lot, and we were talking about the parallels to synesthesia. And synesthesia is a condition where you see sounds or you hear colors, or other senses are crossed. And this is a fairly common condition. I think I remember something like 4% of the population identifies with this. I do not really, but 4% do. And until the 1950s, if you said that, you were just crazy. And then somebody demonstrated in a lab that when some people were shown colors, their auditory, whatever lights up, I'm about to maul something scientific, but whatever lights up when you hear things lit up when they were looking at stuff. And all of a sudden, synesthesia went from a superstition to something that was an undeniable fact. And I know from the synesthetes that I've met that the grounding of it in science creates a kind of calm. Like, okay, I exist here on my own with validation. So that's kind of part of my personal mission. And I also feel there's something, I've been meeting a lot of empaths along this journey of being so public about my gifts and sharing it in such visible ways. And I don't think that there's that much unique about my capacity. I've met many people who are as sensitive or more sensitive than I am. I've met people who are more insightful about what's going on with other people. But I've yet to meet someone as willing to go out there loud and clear and put it out there and argue for it and express what's going on. That seems to be one of the things I'm doing here, and why so much is coming together around it. With that, I think it might be fun if I just showed you rather than continue to talk. So if you are willing to volunteer for a reading, I want you to fit 2 criteria. One, that you are 100% willing to give your genuine reflection back on what I said to you. That was right, that wasn't right, and to, if you can, lay out specific ways it resonated or didn't. Oh, here's what's going on in my life that matched this. Here's what's going on in my life that really contradicts what you said. And 2, that you are okay with this personal stuff that I will be sourcing in you being shared as widely as I can. So with those 2 criteria, does anybody feel up for it? Oh boy. Okay, in the back. Okay. Yeah, to be clear, you and I have never met?
No.
And we don't have a mutual friend that we know of yet?
No.
Okay.
It's my birthday.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Okay, absolutely no more personal information of any kind. And I have to do this for my own purpose, even though it might cut down on the viewing angle, but I'm going to prioritize my own experience reading instead of your experience as an audience. Will you, before we do that, will you turn toward me? If you could just say, what's your name?
Max.
Max, okay. So again, I like being totally transparent, and so as Max walks up, I do have first impression, of course. And those first impressions are subtle. There might be some thoughts with them. I'm ignoring those thoughts right now. When I go into a reading state, you can just hold it to the side for now. When I go into a reading state, I do not hold those thoughts. I try to let them go. And when I integrate thoughts that I have had while I'm watching somebody, I then share those openly. So I try to be as clear as I can about what's coming to me intuitively or in my body, and what's coming to me because I see a man in his, somewhere between the ages of 20 and 40, with glasses and a fun sweatshirt. So,
Max.
Max. Okay, so Max, just a little bit of instructions for you. First, it doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter if you're trying to open or close. It makes no difference. Do whatever you feel like. You might want to watch because it'll be interesting. And if you could, I want absolutely no verbal confirmation whatsoever. I don't want you to say yes or just keep any vocalizations to yourself. However you react with your body is totally fine, because I promise you and I promise the audience that my eyes remain 100% closed during this experience. I do that because 2 reasons. 1, it helps me to tune into what's happening in my own body. And 2, I don't want to be distracted by his reaction. I do get influenced by, oh yeah, that's right, or ooh, or not quite. And I start to try to get things right. And I don't want to do that. As I said, I take transparency even over accuracy. And I also like to keep the streams of information clear. Okay. So right now, what I'm doing is just to get myself centered, and I'm imagining that I'm releasing all the stuff that isn't mine into the earth so that I feel more ready. I'm also tuning into how I feel independent of Max, because I'm conscious of the fact that if I'm not aware of my own emotional state, I might put that onto Max. And then I say this mantra in my head. Wouldn't say it out loud normally, but in the interest of sharing everything, I say, I'm here to be of service to Max. And I say that in my own head a couple of times, and it brings me into a place where I can let go of some of the anxieties I might have around doing good or even wanting to make Max happy, but more than that, to be of service to Max. Okay. So I'm going to put the mic down because I don't feel comfortable reading with it, and I'll try to project. I also take off this necklace that I use to protect myself from people's energies generally, and it's the opposite of what I want to do now, so I take it off. I'm going to scoot a little closer to you, Max. Okay. Can I have your left hands? So as I tune into you right now, I'm sorry I'm talking so loud, but for you and for everyone, can I have your hand again? I feel a little excited, some eagerness, a touch of something that feels like giddy, and something verging on happiness. I'm happy to be here right now. There's a little something that undercuts that feeling of happiness. It's a subtle tightening in the chest, and I experience that in you as a protection, a little layer of protection. I have to keep myself safe in this. And that's what I feel you feeling right now. And now I go beyond how you're feeling right now and into how you're feeling more generally. And the first feeling that comes up as I ask myself that is one of real receptivity. You seem to be really open to things, at least of late. And that excitement that I feel you feeling at this moment, or at least I did a minute ago, is permeating more generally. And there's something else going on, which is it's a kind of insatiability to you that I feel. Like, yeah, I want more, I can do more, give me more. And then there's this playfully mischievous quality to you that I feel. The kind that takes real delight in figuring out things, and maybe scheming feels like a good word, but scheming not with any negative intention, just like if I go this way and I go that way, then it's going to happen, and I got this. A joy in stratagem. Sometimes, even as things appear to be going well for you, and you seem to be in a pretty good state, when they're not, what comes up is this impatience. I want things to happen faster, and a frustration that you seem to be able to release pretty easily, like it comes through your system and then you let it go. And then you come back to a relatively calm state with a subtle tinge of anxiety underneath it that seems to be your baseline. I want to go into that feeling of anxiety a little bit more. Feels like this element that it's subtle enough in you that you can go a long time without expressing it, and it wouldn't surprise me if people relatively close to you didn't know what I was going to say here, or wouldn't relate to this in you. But there's this other quality that I feel. It's like a shadow element. And here, for those watching, is where the feeling that I'm having doesn't reconcile itself quickly into language. It's because I'm not so used to this exact experience, and so everything else kind of came, and this is subtler, and so I spend more time with it. I'll tell you what it sounds like. It's like, bah, 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 bah. Um, oh, okay. The word is somewhere on the spectrum between judgmental and disgusted. Like, even as you are radiating at a pretty high frequency and in a really good state, there's this other person within you, or this shadow element, that's actually quite repulsed by things and quite judgmental about them. I don't like it, I don't like it, I don't like it. You seem to know how to modulate that, hide that, if you will, or not fall into it, depending on your perspective. And as I follow this strand of that feeling of like, ugh, ugh, I don't like it, ugh, that quality, the sound is more evocative than the words I'm guessing at. So what I'm doing here, I just want to share every part of my process, is I get this feeling and my body is doing something, and I think I know what it is, but I'm not sure, and so I'm running these different words through my head that might match the experience. Then I'm testing those words against what my body is doing until there's a match. This doesn't mean that it will match Max's exact experience, it just means that there's a resonance between what my body is telling me and the word that I've come up with. And that word, underneath this feeling of sort of ugh, is a real deep sense of disappointment. And then as I say that, my own, as David, my body relaxes. So there's a subtle tension in me, independent of Max, where I feel like I'm searching for the right thing. And then when I say a thing that matches my body's experience sufficiently, my whole nervous system relaxes. And I can even take a deep breath, and it feels to me like I got it. Now I'm just asking myself, is there something else that I can see here? Yeah, there is something. And it's also very deep. And it's a real feeling of apprehension. Like, okay, I'm going for a ride and I'm not sure. Fear is too strong a word, but it has a touch of fear. It's more like, I'm not sure I can handle what's coming. It also feels like a shadow element. So there's these two sides, this very open and playfully scheming and quite confident person that I want to share, that I saw and felt as you walked toward me. And then there's this other person within you at the same time of this little bit of fearfulness, like you're not sure you can handle things, and then some deep feeling of disappointment that casts its shadow in you through judgment. This is David here, I'm just taking my time to feel into anything else that wants to be seen. And I have the experience of some kind of dance between my semi-consciousness, somewhere between conscious and unconscious, and Max is unconscious. Like somehow we're in some kind of conversation. That's my subjective experience. And it's like I'm asking Max is unconscious, is there anything else you want to show me? And then I get this, just as I say that, my body comes up with an answer, or allows for an answer. And it's this real deep feeling of positive expectation, faith, that's the word. Like this underlying faith that feels very core to who you are, that sits deeper than these shadow elements I talked about, and underlies that positivity. And then I go into a place that the language I use is the core. Somebody else phrased it as core essence. I like that. It's my sense of who Max is, independent of all of these emotional experiences or layers that I've described. And in my experience, every one of us, every single person has a core, and that core is independent of their whole life experience. And so it's the deepest place I can tune into in another person. And for Max, it's this place. And it's very, well, first of all, before I take in words, it's good to just process the experience of what I'm having. I'm having a subtle feeling of energy coming from the sky into my hands, down my arms, circulating from my heart to my head. It feels like a very elevated state. It's much more sky than ground. It's much more connected to the cosmos than to the earth. It's like being a container for a higher purpose that I enact as Max through the link of my ability to see what's happening in my heart and to share with people. Very much circulating like this. And then I'm just waiting around for a good phrase to come up to do a better job of describing what I become somewhat self-conscious of, which is an admittedly vague language. A cosmic trickster. Something like that would be the archetype. It's very different from who I am, and it stretches me to tune into it. Okay, so the last piece of any reading is I ask myself, is there anything that could be of service for Max to hear beyond just reflecting back what I'm experiencing by tuning into him? And I also say this, Max, you would do this already, but if there's stuff I said that doesn't resonate, and I'm open to the possibility that it was completely wrong or so generic as to not mean much to you, throw it away. Let it go. Let it drop off you. I would much rather have you forget it and go, that guy doesn't know what he's talking about, than have you obsess over it or think about it or try to make sense of it. So the judgment I'm asking you to have about it is, does this resonate? Does this feel true? And if not, perhaps it isn't. But if it does feel true, if this does resonate, then I do have a little bit of a suggestion for you. It's a suggestion that flies in the face of most suggestions people give when they're doing one-on-one work, and it cuts against the spiritual communities that I know of. But I offer it to you humbly, and it feels true to me as I tune into you. And that is for you to embrace judgment. So the part of you that feels like, I don't like that, screw that guy, forget him, he's an idiot. Any of those voices that you might have a tendency to want to repress or judge yourself for, or even more dangerously, transcend, it might serve you to actually pull them in, allow that touch of darkness into your system, and if it feels safe, even play with expressing it. And as you start to express some of these negativities, I think you'll feel just even more of a flow state, because you seem to be in a pretty good state. That subtle like as I feel, that subtle tightness in the chest will start to go as you bring out more of that shadow part. So my eyes have been closed this whole time. I have no idea what Max has made of this other than what I would guess in my head. I have not been tuning into Max's experience throughout this reading, only at the beginning. And now I'm going to open my eyes and see you sitting there. And you just take as long as you want to process anything I said. And then when you're ready, give any and all reflections back to me and or the audience.
Thank you.
Wait, we got to give you the mic.
Thank you. Very few things were off. Actually, to the body expressions, very, very similar to things and feelings that I've felt contracting, especially to that shadow side. But going back, so overall, I'd say probably 95% spot on to my experience in my existence. And so I typically introduce myself as Max like a dog because I am very playful, curious, and excitable and disarming. Those are the positive traits that I like about myself. And being my request to my Facebook tribe, I guess, today was to go out and make a stranger smile. That's my birthday request. And so anything that
I'm smiling.
Thank you.
Take your time. There is no rush.
At first, when you were giving your reading of how I was coming up, and until you actually got to the anxiety part, I didn't connect with it currently. For the first 25 or so years of my life, I was able to intellectually rationalize negative emotions, and so I was able to stay between a state of neutral to ecstatic. That's where that playful scheming of like, you want me to feel bad for these consequences, that's silly. And that was my view towards authority of like, you want me to have, behave a certain way, well I can still behave that way and still have what I want. Creating, breaking attachments to limiting structures. But a couple of years ago, so I've always been on this search for why people behave the way they do, because to me they're beautifully irrational, and asking, just questioning, being skeptical of the path that people that we follow. And so I found myself in this emotional intelligence world community, learning about limiting beliefs, coaching in that arena. Never claimed to be a life coach, but being able to process and release cathartic experiences from past traumas has been my focal point over the last 3 years. So over the course, I consciously went into the state of trying to experience empathetic suffering because my parents hugged me every single night. I never really grew up with any extreme trauma. But I saw it in a lot of people, and through research of cultural oppressions would follow to see where did it all start.
Wait, can I just bring you back?
Yes.
Just want to refocus you on your experience of what I was saying.
Yes.
Like that hit, this is what it correlates to me and me. That didn't hit. Like, and if you don't remember some of the stuff, that's okay too. Sometimes it's a lot.
So the cringing is what I related to the most. And something that's I've been tiptoeing on the edge of for about a year. And so what I felt have come through me in the past where I don't have words, where I don't know where this is coming from. It has come through a contracting of nearly every muscle in my body, and like just clenching in my face and my mouth.
What I said about that was it felt like some deep-seated disappointment, and then it would manifest as a kind of a judgment, negativity. Did that resonate?
Yes. The very skeptical, also very cynical, and I associated that with disconnecting with people or creating barriers, and so I did away with all judgment. Anything that could have been a judgment, I just would shame myself for even having. So that was very, very, very true.
And how about what I said about who you are at your essence, kind of like the, forgot the language I used, but.
Cosmic trickster?
Oh, the cosmic trickster. Yes. Playful behavioral pattern interrupter is sort of the name that I most gravitated towards in the past, or when I'm on mushrooms, the gypsy, with just playing around with people. Yeah.
I want to say, is there something else that we need to check what I said against what his experience is that would be helpful?
When you said embrace your judgments, that seemed to get a lot of recognition, or you liked hearing that? I'd like to hear about that.
Well, because of that association that judgments create distance, and I would either consciously and then subconsciously started just ignoring them or pushing them away. So anything that was a natural thought, I would either tune out so I could be present or connect. And I've shaved away a lot of who I actually am and the process of that. So
I think
a relief is in order.
Is there somebody else who has is there something else that we should confirm or not confirm that is not occurring to me? Yeah. You just shout it out.
I would really love to hear how many people felt that applied to them.
How many people felt that applied to them? So about the whole reading? How many people, can I rephrase your question actually? How many people felt the reading I just gave would have matched your sense of yourself to the degree to which it's matching Max's sense of himself? So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 people out of an audience of 90 or so. So 10% of the audience found this to be relatable to them.
And mostly men.
Mostly men. Was there any woman who felt that? Okay, so no, actually about half men.
I'm just wondering about the faith.
Faith. A deep abiding sense of faith.
So the disappointment has gotten in the way of the faith?
No. In my experience, the faith was underneath that feeling of disappointment. Like the faith is what's guiding you, and then there's this disappointment that is as yet unprocessed, part of the shadow.
I've lost sight of that faith, but I'm coming back to it. Like a denial of faith, that I can count on the faith has been more my experience of myself, but the faith in it'll be okay and it'll all work out has always been there. It's been, yes.
I would love, if somebody has an analytical, skeptical mind that is feeling like this must be bullshit in some way, this would be the perfect moment to explain how that is so.
There's a sign right there that says bullshit.
I hope that fits the description of what you're going to say.
My question was, so can you both separately define what is your definition?
Great. I'll go first, so I'm not influenced by him. So I'm having
Write it down on a piece of paper and then you email it. That would be better.
we're not at that. I like that in principle.
I know my answer, so that's fine.
Okay, so he says he knows his answer. So like I said, I'm having a feeling. And as you saw, I struggled for the word faith. It was like this positive, safe feeling of expectation, this underlying sense that it's going to be okay. And it's not so much that we're processing information very differently as I see you. It's not so much that I'm thinking about it and then trying to find the right word for it. It's that I'm feeling it and waiting for language that matches the feeling.
Faith is trust and surrendering for me, and so that it will be okay, that if I do let go, that there will be a resolution that is healing and that I can at least live with. So.
Okay, just one more moment for a completely skeptical, this must be bullshit, and this is how I would identify it as such kind of comment, which is really what, to me, I want to work with. Yeah?
Not quite that strong, but I'm just really wondering to what degree you're just describing the human experience.
To what degree am I describing the human experience? My own experience is that every reading is quite different. Let me try this. How many people hearing that reading just go, that is really not me? How many people go, that could be me? Does that help?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Okay. All right, one more. Skeptical. Sorry, usually the skeptics are so hard to pull out, and this seems like the right moment. Yeah.
So, quick question is, to what, so you mentioned in the beginning that all of your notions that you have for the person as you walk up, you try to get out in the air and use.
Yeah.
But then I guess I wonder is, I think what I find most interesting that you close your eyes, which is interesting, because obviously, like we all read body language, we all read a variety of different non-verbal signals.
To what extent am I reading what I'm seeing as he walks down or calling on him and then integrating it? My conscious attempt is to do the opposite. My conscious attempt is to let it go.
So in terms of skepticism,
Does it somehow leak in, conceivably? And is there even a real line to draw between my empathic understanding of this man as I tune into him and what my eyes are picking up? There's a line in the culture that says, oh yes, we all know that we can read people, and then that says, oh no, you're not actually tuning in and feeling his feelings, that's BS. I don't think there actually is such a line, and that, first of all, before we go to that's the segue to turning it over to the neuroscientist. But first, I think let's thank you so much,
Thank you.
Max. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.